I will. Okay. Okay. So now,
Do we start?
yeah, it is start.
Okay. Hello, friends. First of all, good morning. Are you able to hear me? That would be a good sign to know. Because this is check that you want to do. All right. So, good morning. My name is Deepak Kumar Mehta, and I've started working as an ISM volunteer, and trying to spread the knowledge and awareness about the sourcing and procurement domain throughout the fellow colleagues in different organizations. So first of all, I just want to wish that everybody is staying safe and healthy in their indoors, in their houses, considering the current COVID-19 situation, and hopefully this gets resolved as soon as possible so that we can go to as business as usual. But certainly these times are tricky, and we are forced to stay indoors to prevent this pandemic to affecting a lot of different people. And I hope everybody stays safe and healthy, and their family members as well. Now, moving on to today's topic. So I took negotiation as a topic for the webinar today, and I thought of giving my insight and to spread this with respect to how I or what knowledge that I've learned from all the literature that I've done or the CPSM that I've done. So thought of sharing it and getting a feedback from all the fellow colleagues who are in the same domain, and able to understand whether they are and basically to understand the other areas of improvement. So to begin with, my name is Deepak Kumar Mehta. I'm working in Jaguar Land Rover as an IT buyer, and approximately my work experience is 9 years now. By education, I'm a mechanical engineer, and I've done a postgraduate diploma in international trade from distance learning. Professional certifications are CPSM and Princeton. And I've mentioned my hobbies. So considering the current situation, I am trying to focus more on one of my hobby, which is teaching. And I mean, this webinar is not teaching; it's about able to talk about the topics we love. And if you want to reach out to me, then my email ID is mentioned in there. That's deepak.mehto88@gmail.com. So without further ado, uh, I'll just take away what the agenda would be, what the flow would be for the webinar. It starts with the basic what negotiation is. Then we talk about the social contract cycle and where negotiation sits in social contract cycle. Moving on to what the process is and how the soft skills are important for negotiation process, because current industry 4.0 will be basically focusing on soft skills. Then we talk about the commercial and non-commercial aspects that we look into when we are negotiating. We'll talk about some tools and tactics that can be used. I mean, these would be pretty generic. And I've tried to put up some case studies so that I mean we can look at them and try to have some grasp of understanding how negotiations work. So the objective would be to understand how negotiation is and how pragmatic it is. And it's not an inherited skill. It is something which gets sharpened over time. So negotiation, when we talk about negotiation, if you see the Oxford Dictionary meaning, it says it's a formal discussion to reach an agreement. And when we go into the ISM definition, it talks about having a communication process, both internally and externally, to reach a mutually satisfactory agreement. Now, internally is important because you need to have a discussion before internally when you are going into negotiations, and your stakeholders, internal stakeholders, your business holders, your finance, your engineering, your support system should have, they say you should have their inputs and your buy-in to move ahead and to negotiate on a united front. When externally you're talking about supplier and the other third parties which are not from your organization. Now, when we talk about negotiation, when we think about as just the supply chain professional, many times we think that negotiation is just about getting a monetary deal done. But there are a lot of times when negotiation is more than money, and it's basically money is just one of the factors that we negotiate and agree upon and get an agreement on. And now we talk about bargaining as well, but bargaining is not negotiation. Negotiation is a complete set of things that you discuss. Bargaining is majorly on pricing, and bargaining is not a very formal word, and not a very formal exercise as well. It's more of a competition, and negotiation is more of a discussion of a very cooperative discussion where you reach mutually satisfactory goals. Now, the key element for any negotiation is information. And when you are going into a contract, and if you're expending out money, then what value you're able to get from the contract is dependent on what information you had before negotiation. So moving on to the next slide. Now, this is a basic pictorial representation of what source to contract cycle would look like. It would start from need assessment, then to understand what the market is, then to pick specific suppliers, get them onboarded, then moving toward the sourcing execution that can be via different kind of RFX, RFI, RFP, or RFQ you're doing as per your requirement, and then moving forward if you are adding e-auctions and all that stuff. Now, before and the next part after the sourcing execution is getting into contracting. Now, negotiation sits in the contracting sphere, and the important key thing is that it's not a standalone activity, or which does not depend on the last 4 points. All the information that is driven on all preceding 4 aspects, are actually accumulated here in the contracting sphere and used while you're having negotiation. So, what kind of information that you can extract is the next slide all about. These are very basic things that you can at least understand at each phase of sourcing. When you're assessing need, now you can understand the requirement, your specification. You can understand what was previously bought, how you want to improve, and what would be the future forecast. Because while assessing, you will understand the forecast. If there is, while understanding the needs as well, you will understand the budget. Obviously, there will be a budget based on what your previous year spend was. Understanding spend analysis, so understanding if there is a whole category that you're looking in, you'll try to understand your focus areas. And obviously, the biggest thing is understanding various stakeholders that would be part of it. Depending on the category, you will be, getting in touch with a lot of project managers, a lot of engineering, a lot of quality inspection and accounts, finance. Depends on the category. When you are understanding and you're moving into the sphere of market research, you'll understand what our available sources are, how the market is. Is it a buyer's market? Is it a supplier's market? A good thing would be having a benchmarking data. If you have access to benchmarking data from the leading benchmarking sites, then it's great. If not, then in Google has or internet has a lot of stuff that you can go ahead and understand. And preferably, if you can go to suppliers' web pages to understand what their capabilities and how they are, in the market space. Then also, while doing the market research, you understand the technology trends and you understand what alternate solutions you can, pitch in for, or what can be the right product. And it can help you to understand what would be your requirement and specification. While you're picking up the suppliers, you understand your sourcing strategy. I mean, depending on your long-term, short-term aspects, you understand how you want to source the product. Whether you want to go a direct approach or a reseller approach, it will depend on that. Supplier information that would be collected via supplier qualification will also be really crucial. You'll understand supplier's position, and that will help you to negotiate well. While onboarding a supplier, you'll obviously get into the terms and conditions agreement. I'll try to understand how, what all uh, deviations a supplier will have, and these points will help you when you will be preparing a technical scorecard, weighted scorecard later. While sourcing exercise, obviously, what kind of contracting time you're looking at. So I've just mentioned two here. I'll focus more on the coming slide what all contracting types are. So then it could be a time material depending or fixed price depending on whether you have a defined scope or an undefined scope. And obviously, if you have competitive pricing while the sourcing exercise, when you go out for bidding, you'll understand that how that pricing can be used in negotiation. So I thought of putting up this slide to give a brief outline of what contracting types are available. And this is very high level. This is a very vantage level kind of view of contracts where we are talking about fixed price, cost base, and indefinite delivery as the basic headers. A fixed price is something where obviously you're talking with the word that it goes says that we are fixing a price, and that price will include what supplier would like to pay for it. There can be a variation to it with the redetermination. When I say it's about if there is a fluctuation with respect to uh, currency exchange or raw material prices, so you can inbuild that while having a contract. Cost based, basically, if you can calculate costs, then we can go into with suppliers and have pretty basic agreement where cost plus fee. So we know there is a cost and we are paying a fee to a supplier. And other variation can be a cost plus percentage of cost. Now this gives incentive to supplier to spend more because basically the incentive that they are getting is on basis of percentage of cost. Indefinite delivery. So obviously, when you are not clear with respect to the amount, so you are doing a blanket order or a time material contract. Time material contract are basically more on services side where you do not know the deliverables, fixed deliverables, and considering the current agile environment where these specifications are ever evolving, time material contracts are pretty much used in a lot of environment. Now, this slide it talks about the negotiation process in very simple terms, how you can plan it. Firstly, I mean, establishing objective. I mean, here you can establish what is your key criteria, what whether it is price or price plus the timely delivery, or a long-term relationship that you're looking at, or if it is a spot buy that you just want the value for money, or if it is a off-the-shelf item, then you want to procure it as soon as possible. Moving further is to collect and analyze data. Now here are all the data that you have collected or in your 4 stages of social contract cycle before the contracting phase will help you and collect it, rationalize it, sort it, and analyze and understand your focus areas and understand the previous pricing data and all that stuff. Preparation planning. Now all that data that you have collected, if you can able to put up in a manner that is available for ready reference, you have the key highlight and key indicators from them, and that is really good. Moving on to the team selection. Now, team selection it depends on the size and complexity of the project. If the the project is complex and the value associated is very high, you'll have a bigger team. You'll have full-time team members from basically different departments like finance, like engineering, like quality, and sometimes it's just a one-man thing when you as a person or the negotiator as supply chain person have to wear different hats, and there is a part of legal as well that you bring in contracts to legal thresholds while discussing with the supplier. You're not a lawyer for sure, but you have to build up capability on that end as well. And moving on to when you're all prepared with all those 4 setups, you proceed ahead and schedule the negotiation and get moving forward with the formal discussion with the supplier. Now, when we are engaging in a negotiation, now a soft skill is a word that I think is a misnomer. Soft skill is something that says which is intangible or something which cannot be measured in a way like having a degree for the engineering. So everybody can be a strong communicator, but you cannot give a certificate for that. So obviously when we talk about soft skills, negotiation is all about people skills, and soft skills are people skills. Now the first soft skill that is about is strong communication, both written and verbal. Now we aren't talking, I personally will not say that it is required that you have the best of the vocabulary or we are with the best of phrases or idioms. It's all about you're able to communicate it clearly, what is your requirement, you're able to understand what the proposal is, and you're not allowing any ambiguity to build up for future. That is most important. Biggest point is active listening. So it is linked to the first skill that I mentioned, but active listening is important. When you're not able to listen properly, and if you are going with preconceived notions, or you're not listening to respond, but you're listening to react, then it becomes a problem. So negotiation requires active listening. Data analysis. Now, when I say data analysis, it's not about the ability to use software, or it's not about the ability to have a mathematical aptitude. It's all about understanding the underlying indicators, and that will come from learning, from experience, from understanding a lot of things around us. Ability to maintain cross-functional rapport. I mean, it's a known fact that when you're in a negotiation, you will require inputs from a lot of different departments, internally and externally as well. There might be a situation you might require suppliers input as well. So the key aspect while having a negotiation is to maintain respect for everybody, and you need to understand that work has to be kept different, and personal aspects have to get different. So ability to maintain that relationship with a lot of different people will be very helpful. Last point that I mentioned is about cultural awareness. Now, cultural awareness is that we are definitely, we all know that we are going global, and there are a lot of times when we interact with different suppliers which do not belong to our local area or our country and speak different languages. So we need to understand that awareness, and the ability to understand people. For example, initiating a small talk as well. If you talk with the examples that they can relate, and that gets a very good thing. For example, people in India, I know enthusiasts. There is a huge enthusiasm about cricket, but when you go across Europe, and there the enthusiasm drops to soccer. So the awareness about that will help you, and also the awareness of with respect to the accents as well. There are times when you will not be able to understand. So here you would have to convey this very fact that yes, there are some things that you want to adapt to, or adapt with experience in moving life. Moving on to, so the next aspect that I would like to talk about is the aspects of commercial and non-commercial. Now, commercial, we believe that all negotiations is all about pricing, money, and the better pricing we achieve is the best outcome. But these are very less in comparison to the aspect which are covered as non-commercial negotiations, which come up in play when you have a situation. So when I talk about commercial aspects of negotiation, the first very aspect is the pricing of the solution of the product or the services that has been offered. Now, if you're going into and multi-year agreement kind of a thing, wherein you will talk about year-on-year price increase. Even if you're not going in for multi-year, you would like to have a discussion beforehand as well, so that you're aware of next year cost. If there is an associated maintenance or support that would be required moving forward, say for example, if you're buying a capital equipment, then you would like to fix that percentage. For example, if there is a software, if you're buying a perpetual software, you want to have that maintenance support, then you want to fix this maintenance support percentage as well with the supplier. Insurance amounts that you want to maintain. Obviously, the higher insurance amount that you want, it will also impact the pricing that you will get. So we would have to be clear enough what kind of insurance amount you are able to, you're required to maintain. The LD or service credits, which is related to the issues of late deliveries or services not being, rendered properly on time. Then you have to understand and, uh, say get decided on again an agreement on what kind of damages that supplier or would be paying. Liabilities in terms of limited liabilities, you want to understand how much they are capped at. Sometimes we would like that is as unlimited, and sometimes we can go up 2 to 3 times of the whole contract pricing. It all depends on the category that you're working in. Now, moving on to non-commercial negotiation aspects. Now, these are important as well because when we talk about the scope of use, if we are leaving aside a user, then it becomes an issue. For example, if you are buying a software which allows you to your company employees to use, but not a contractor, then that can become issue. So you need to have a clear definition of what users are using, where the geography is, and which companies or subsidiaries or contractors or subcontractors can use the product or the services. Testing and acceptance. Now, when we talk about testing, we should have a clear testing criteria that gives us specifications that proves the specifications of machines. So when you are buying capital equipment, for example, a drilling machine, you are able to get the metal sheet or the metal part being drilled to a certain depth, then you're able to prove that. And testing can be both at the suppliers and at the buyers, and that depends on what kind of contract you have done. Acceptance should never be deemed acceptance. You should try to avoid it. Indemnification is a clause where the seller indemnifies the buyer in case there are mishaps. So, and if there is a breach from the supplier and there is a legal claim that has been put forward, so that indemnifies the buyer. So that has to be discussed. Confidentiality, yes, depending on the location geography, the confidentiality has to comply to data protection and privacy laws as well, which are built in. GDPR is one of the things that has come across all of the Europe and is a basic check while getting into it, whether the supplier is GDPR compliant or not. If you're dealing in payment related industry, then PCI DSS, and if health related, then HIPAA and IT Act is for the Indian data protection. Now, similar to the above point is the compliance to applicable legislation and industry standards. Now, I was procuring electric overhead cranes in my very nascent stage of my career, and I get to know that there is a IS code, Indian Standard Code of IS 3177 that complies to it. So having that kind of information helps. If the supplier is able to comply or non-comply, will become a teething point rather than just pricing. Now, moving to termination rights. Now, this is the remedies. One of the remedies is termination rights. You should know that what are outs that you have, whether you have a termination for convenience or not in the contract, where you can close this without even a material breach that comes in the termination for cause. So that is important. And what is the notice period that is given for termination? What is the refund that you will get in case there is a termination or in case there is a material breach? How you would get your data if there is a termination? So all that has to be discussed. Force majeure. Now, current situation is a great example of force majeure where nobody can stop the coronavirus situation. Now, but there are times when suppliers try to pin their subcontractors as well as for this force majeure, and they say that if they stop working, then I can. So certain kind of clauses have to be explored to understand what they actually are meaning as and what the scope is. Then code of law and dispute resolution is about if there is a dispute and what code of law, code of law for these New Delhi or UK, which place laws will be applicable, and how that dispute will be resolved, by the arbitration or litigation, and what will be the process for going into the most not required process of litigation, how it would be dealt if there is a conflict. So all that has to be in the negotiation aspect of non-commercial area. Now, well, when we are talking about leverages, we're getting a preferable agreement on a lot of terms. So we have leverages, we have pointers that can help. First is to understand what kind of market it is. I mean, whether it's a buyer market, and if it is a buyer market where you have a lot of sellers at your disposal, then it becomes a leverage. You have a chance, you can tend to install that speculation in the mind of supplier that yes, you can switch. Consumption data and volume aggregation. Obviously, if you are clear about your consumption data, what you have consumed previously, and that all the sites across, you can aggregate that volume, then you can get a better deal. For example, when you're with respect to software, because I'm an IT buyer, I'll keep giving out examples of software also. If there is a software being installed or purchased by different pockets of the organization, then as a buyer, you can go into an aggregate, into an enterprise kind of solution, and give a better deal, better discount for the buyer. But it requires a lot of work, considering that you have to get a buy-in from stakeholders. Forecast. If you have forecast data, that brings in a lot of information, because you're able to provide information to suppliers so that they can have their resources well planned enough, and that can help you to get a lot of discount. Supplier financial position is a great tool, and if they're able to understand that, then it supports in getting a better negotiating factor. Because if we know that supplier is having a tricky financial position, if it is not it's not in a best of the financial position, then it shows it is either it can be ready to negotiate down on their pricing, or we would have to have certain terms in our agreement that safeguards us in case the supplier ceases to exist or ceases to perform, and fails in the middle of operation. Now, one of the factors that we can understand is what is the size of the business we are offering to the supplier, and what is its comparative to the supplier's revenue. If your company, if your organization is adding a lot of revenue to supplier, then you can go ahead and ask the supplier for more discount, because you are more of a partner there. What value your business add to supplier is an important thing. For an example, if you open up avenues, your organization is opening up avenues for suppliers. So for example, a supplier has never entered power industry, and you are a power industry organization, then that helps to get a chance into the industry and become a supplier for that. Technology change. Understanding technology is important. Now again, if you know that there's certain software which is available as software service, which would be cheaper to buy and purchase on a small timing, and as compared to on-premise. To understand technology changes is important. Currency exchange. A lot of raw material might depend on currency exchange as well. So understanding that aspect will be helpful. Supply switching cost and ease. If we are aware that we can switch supplier easily, or if we are not able to supply easily and there's a huge cost, then that it impacts the negotiation as well. Supply performance and accreditations and number of deviations. So these 2 points help in getting a weighted scorecard later. So you can convey. I mean, if certainly a supplier which has proven performance and has accreditation to the industry standards and industry certifying agencies, will be obviously chosen before and have it at hand. And the number of deviations, lesser number of deviation posed by suppliers in negotiation will mean that it will be an easier aspect to move ahead. So it isn't a hard-bent rule that you will give a business to somebody who chooses to accept as it is, but it is something which gives a kind of a benefit to a person, or it is like a tool to reduce deviation so that it reduces the work and negotiation. When we talk about negotiation tools, so these are basic tools that I could introduce, because if we go into details, there will be a lot of time. And these tools are a lot of people are aware about. So Pareto or ABC analysis is basically 80-20 rule. They're able to understand what is your A criteria items, B criteria item, and C criteria items. You would understand where the strategic focus has to be there. Price-link matrix, that is basically, if you see the first picture, which specifies that how you can, on the basis of supplier risk and the amount of the value the business we are giving, right, we can define the suppliers into 4 of the quadrants that are mentioned: leverage, strategic, non-critical, bottleneck. And for an example, if somebody is just having a high spend and the supplier risk is high, then you will look forward to having a long-term relationship there. So understanding your suppliers in these quadrants helps a lot. SWOT analysis, basic strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat analysis will help you to understand what strengths you or supplier has that he brings in. For example, if there is a patent from a supplier patent has a technology patent it has, then it brings a lot of strength to supplier, and it gives a better position to supplier as well. Now, supplier perception matrix, it is an important tool. It allows you to understand whether how you sit in for how the supplier perceive you basically, and if they see you as a core customer, then they will try to give you the best of the services. They will be good in their pricing. Basic costing techniques, we understand total cost of ownership that can be employed all across all categories. Total cost of ownership, for those who don't know, it's to understand, I mean, pre-purchase, purchase, and post-purchase pricing, and what minusing the salvage value or the return on investment that you get. So that will be a good thing to understand. ABC costing and target costing, costing will understand and give you a brief aspect if you want to go into the depth of building up a cost for the supplier part, and to understand how you can negotiate downwards. When I talk about negotiation tactics, now the very first thing that we have seen is we do not accept the first offer, because obviously if something has been offered in the first go, then it can be dug up more, and we can go for to understand why that has been offered first, and whether we can add value, if not reduce the price, whether we can get more value out of it. Empathy while disagreeing, what I want to say from here is that there are points when you're discussing, we are not supposed to compete with them, we are not fighting with them. So even if we are disagreeing with the suppliers, if we are disagreeing with the opposite party, there should be a relationship there of a respect there. Revealing an optimistic position sometimes help it. So for example, you have the best possible position. If you're able to say the best possible positions, for example, if you want to buy something which you are able to get at the least possible price of 100. So if you say 100 and you get 110, then you might get something close to your optimistic position. Concession trade-offs. Now again, it is linked to the same point that I told about earlier. If you're giving a concession to a supplier, then you obviously you will get a concession from it. You try to get it. You will not give it without any trade-off from there. Now, if you are moving to the next point, is if you are stuck on a point which is like a stalemate, then easier thing is to agree on the first, which are easy, and collect that agreeable, so that you can have a cumulative agreed aspects more than non-agreed aspects, and that helps you move forward. Now, I've mentioned misdirection. This is not something which is cunning or negative. It's about it's a technique where sometimes you try to put the focus of supplier something else and get information on the required item. It happens a lot of time, and it can be a very useful technique. Missing person of time. Now, usually we never take our decision maker. We try to can portray that decision maker is not there at the table, because there will be a time where negotiation and suppliers say that, okay, if you want this, I'll give you this. It will not give you time to reconsider. So missing person drafting helps there. Uh, BATNA and walkaway option. Now, BATNA is best alternative to negotiated agreements. So what alternative you have? For example, if you're dealing with your best suitable supplier and there is a next suitable supplier which can be an alternative, so that can be a helpful aspect. BATNA can be, if you take a real life example, in case we are going for an interview and we have an offer from an existing offshore, a different firm, then that offer can be used as a negotiating tactic. Uh, Lastly, the walkaway option. I mean, not all negotiations will end up positively or getting you the deal. So you would have to understand what is the least possible uh, agreement that you want to reach, and if not, then you should know that there has to be a walkaway, that you have to close that negotiation there. Now, I'll talk about the case studies that I try to prepare. I'll not go into the numbers or details, and because obviously I don't want to cause any kind of confidential issues, because these are case studies that have happened in my career life, and with my esteemed colleagues who are working with me and were working with me in previous organizations. So firstly, I took the category of capital expenditure, where we are spent working on complex projects and spending a lot of money. Now, there was a situation where we were setting up a new mechanical solution plant. Now, this mechanical solution, for an example, it can be a compressed air or a cooling system, or anything related to like that. The specifications were defined, and this is something which was very new, and the budget was quite less, because initially it was a machine-wise solution, and we were looking at a comprehensive plant-wise solution. Now, first aspect was to understand the specification and understand the budget and understand what could be the investment returns and how we can get it. And then we could look forward to the solution providers in the markets. We were able to get quotes from 3 of these providers when we reached out to 5, and these 3 were technically suitable. We went through competitive bidding. We got the pricing. So in the course of the action, we got an information that one of the suppliers, say A, was actually working for the same mechanical plant solution installation at a plant near us. So we were able to get that information, and we were able to understand what the project was from the supplier, and it was very close to our solution. So it helped us to understand the basic drivers of the cost, like design cost, manpower, mobilization cost, getting the resources, setting, having their suppliers and sources set up. So all that seemed to have been set up, and we were able, because of that information, we were able to secure a really good pricing for the mechanical solution plant that we were, aspiring to get into the organization. So information on the basis of what was the current project delivery was very crucial, and our timelines and their timelines helped the suppliers intention to it was more aligned to get the business, so they provided a very crucial and favorable pricing. Now, moving on to the second situation that we faced was with respect to the fabricated component sourcing. So we were getting a component fabricated by one of the suppliers, and we were looking to reduce pricing. Obviously, every year that's a federated reduce pricing, and supplier was unable to provide that situation. We went into cost. We tried to understand what is the key cost driving factor. and we got to understand that the raw material was the key driving factor. So getting a solution there was to help the supplier to get a better raw material at a better pricing. So we went to the raw material provider and we did a tri-party agreement. Now we on the basis of our forecast, on a basis of our production target, we were able to tell them that this is the amount of raw material that we're looking at, and that helped the supplier to get a better pricing of raw material, and that helped us to get a better pricing for fabricated component from the supplier. Now, obviously, all the escalation pricing with respect to the raw materials were also discussed, and this was the part of the agreement that was struck. Moving on to the case studies in IT category. Now, now the first solution is about the software solution or enterprise solution. Now, why this buying a software is more about understanding the request, because there are majorly a lot of times when we move into a sole source kind of situation where you know that this is the single supplier available in the market, this is the market leader, and we want nothing else than the market leader. Then at that kind of situation, you would like to understand your requirement more and to understand what the solutions are available, so that exact for the correct things are bought, because these are bought for long term. So when we were looking for getting a enterprise solution, we thought about firstly we thought about understanding what modules were required, like whether we required materials, whether we required sourcing, we required HR, we required customer relationship. Then we identified what are the ERP providers available in the market, what was their market size, how they were, how many industries used to prefer which one. Then we understand the deployment position, which was with respect to whether this would be on-premise or private or public cloud. So on-premise meant that you would have your own data centers, you would have your own servers. Private meant that a cloud that is specifically, for you by a cloud provider, and public cloud meant that it would be a shared facility with a cloud provider. Then we thought about what would be the licensing model, whether it would be a perpetual that we buy it right now and it stays with us forever, and we just buy the maintenance support for the future coming years, whether it would be a subscription based or an yearly kind of a thing, whether it would be a consumption based, whether it depends on the number of users. It may be a per user extension or a bracket of user extensions, for example, per 10 user, per 100 user, per 1,000 user. And it would, so obviously buying a perpetual would not allow that much of flexibility, but a subscription or consumption would allow the flexibility. It will allow us to reduce and increase the solution in coming years. What kind of support we were looking at, whether we were looking at just the following support, whether we were looking at getting updates from the supplier or software solution provider. Basis all this, we were looking to go ahead with the competitive bidding. Now there was a way that either we could go direct with the ERP providers, or we can obviously go with the authorized ERP partners, which can provide the solution, help them install and support them in the future years. So this information is helpful while having negotiations in the enterprise solution environment. And the last case study is about the professional services. So this was the case was related to IT professional service, but it can be applied across a lot of professional services, legal services as well. You can take that as a reference case. So the situation was that we were working with a supplier, and we wanted to have these professional services rate card done for a year. Now, to move ahead, we thought of collating the information with respect to the rates that were by roles, by experience, by location. So, for example, roles say that a software developer, an experience is 0 to 3 years, location maybe which country it is located, whether we are getting the person from best cost country, or whether we are taking the person from the native country that we are trying to employ that IT resource. Now, the data that was for reference was from previous year data that we had worked with. We obviously just not went, getting data from the existing supply, but also with competitor as well. And obviously, we will look for benchmark data as well to understand what kind of professionals, what is the roles and what is the trend, and how much is the amount that is being paying industry wide. Moving on to the target pricing from the reference data, we were able to understand that this would be an estimated target pricing, and we would like to have negotiation basis that. Now, the important when I talked about concessions or when we talked about trade-off, so we understood that we will not get everything as per us. So we try to identify focus roles, focus areas. We try to understand what roles would be more used across different locations, what experience level we would require, and what location would be the place where the most work happen, IT-related work happen. So that gives us the word, because it's, for an example, if we have 10 roles at 10 different experience level at 10 different locations, then we have about 1,000 permutation and combinations, and to discuss that will take an year itself, and this was not suitable kind of thing. So understanding focus roles help there. And also we were able to look into our consumption data, which we had previous years, and we would understand what for the consumption or forecasted pipeline that we had, what amount of work we were looking at, and basis this volume, the prices were agreed with the supplier. Now, here is a clear case of study where you understand that what was the usage data, what was the benchmark data. When I talked about a lot of benchmarking, you can either get it through a lot of benchmarking providers like Forrester, Gartner, Everest, Pero, Future Purchasing, etc., which are paid subscriptions, obviously. And if these are not available to you, I mean, if you are not able to pay that money for benchmarking data, you can go and search internet. There will be a lot of indexes available with respect to services, and which can give you at least a reference data to work with. Now, in conclusion, I would like to say that negotiation requires a collaborative approach. You cannot single-handedly negotiate. A person is, if we say he's a strong negotiator, then it means that he is a strong and collaborative and cooperative person. Objective is to achieve value, not to achieve best pricing, but to achieve value while keeping relationship. Now, in such times where we are facing COVID-19 situation where a lot of production is hit, plants are getting closed down. So we are as a purchasing, as supply chain person, in constant contact with the suppliers, and we're trying to maintain critical services up and running. We're trying that to happen. More time needed for preparation and execution is the key. The time in the execution, if you are able to invest more time in preparation, then obviously the execution would be smoother and faster without ambiguities when you work across. And lastly, it's good to learn lessons from past negotiations. Help discussing. I mean, it does not imply that it's about your own organization. Discussing with your colleagues with respect to how they handle the situation. Not getting into details, but at least to understand how they handle the situation and how these case studies can be used in future. Helps to do negotiation at the best of the times and best of the results. That's it from my end. This is the end of my presentation. If there are questions, I would look forward to it. Guys, you can write in your questions and I can respond back. Uh, in case anybody is typing questions, so, but I am not able to see in my questions tab.